The path to peg. How pDAI achieves its peg in a post-maker world. Welcome to what will be my final video before the peg. I go through where we are today, how lending platforms and their derivatives work, 99 Capital's most recent research and how we get to peg, and what we can expect to see next. But first, limit orders are coming to PulseChain on PulseChain's lowest fee DEX aggregator, along with automatic dollar cost averaging. Pro-Trader launches next week. You can find us at pro-trader.app. So, where we are today. For years we tracked the movements on Maker. We learnt its mechanisms and understood the Hyperloop implications of backing pDAI with the OA bags. But then suddenly, the script was flipped. Maker had an exploit. A Vietnamese kid was extracting value from the auction system within Maker. Then came along a purple-haired witch, promising to cast a proposal on Maker to stop pDong's exploit. But she lied. Instead, when auctions went live, she took over Maker and shut it down. She then minted 22 billion pDAI, stole $500,000 from the Maker vaults, and dumped it on the market, whilst pumping her own tokens she believed were part of the plan to peg pDAI. Gone were the days of the Hyperloop. We were now in uncharted waters, with no clear path to peg. Maker was shut down. The vape cabal had won. The pioneers were out of the picture. Or so it seemed. How lending platforms and their derivatives work. Since the beginning of pDAI, Aave and Compound have remained a constant in the background. But what are they exactly? Aave and Compound are decentralized lending platforms. Very high level, here's how they work. Users deposits assets into the protocol, in this example $100 worth of DAI into Aave. Aave then mints the user $100 worth of Aave DAI, or pDAI, making pDAI a derivative of DAI. Aave then takes that deposited DAI and puts it to work in lending pools. Users are able to take out loans from that deposited DAI. They had to deposit collateral to obtain that loan. To keep their claim over their deposited collateral, they have to pay interest to Aave, which, after taking a cut, pays out interest to the user who put up the DAI to be loaned out. Over time, the user's amount of pDAI increases as they earn interest. Compound works in a similar way, with one key difference. Its derivative is Compound DAI, or cDAI. Instead of paying out interest to users in cDAI tokens, it instead holds on to the interest earned and uses it to justify increasing the price of cDAI. So users who put up cDAI to be loaned out don't receive more cDAI tokens, but instead see their cDAI steadily increase in value over time. So pDAI is paid out in tokens, while cDAI's interest is transferred in price appreciation. What happens when you sell a derivative on the market? Well, they're pegged assets. When you sell a pegged asset, it increases the price of the token you are buying in a liquidity pool. Simultaneously, it does also decrease the price of the pegged asset locally in that pool. Arbitrage bots then rebalance those pools, reflecting a price increase in the token being bought and returning the pegged asset to its peg price. Bots level the price of volatile assets across the market by locating other liquidity pools where it is lower in price, buying the token there and selling it into the pool where it's priced higher. But for pegged assets, our bots see the token is priced differently to its intended peg. They buy it, then go to the governing protocol and sell it at the peg price, making a profit. And that's how pegged assets keep their peg, including derivatives. A governing protocol checks to see if it has enough collateral backing its pegged asset. Our bots collect the pegged asset from liquidity pools where it is priced differently and trade it with the protocol at the pegged price, making a profit by doing so. So pegged tokens do fluctuate locally in liquidity pools. They are then returned to their pegs price through arbitrage bots, quickly capitalizing on the price difference in the pool versus the price on offer at the protocol. So why are we talking about Aave and Compound in detail now? Because therein lies the path to peg. Because whilst Maker's emergency shutdown function was triggered, it doesn't do what people think it does. So, over on PulseChain, we currently have a Maker that's closed for business. But we also have DAI's lending platforms, Aave and Compound. Let's come back to that in a moment. First, let's look at how they operate over on Ethereum with a working Maker. Thanks to a little nudge, 99 discovered that Maker has a direct integration with both Aave and Compound. Maker, the issuer of DAI, is integrated with its lending platforms. This integration allows for the movement of DAI between platforms. Maker is able to mint DAI, then lend it out to its lending platforms, who in turn lend out the DAI and get paid interest. The protocols are then able to mint their respective derivatives and pay Maker the interest they owe on their loan. Why does Maker have this integration? What is the benefit of being able to directly supply its lending platforms with DAI? Interest rates. By providing DAI directly to its lending platforms, Maker is able to maintain a target interest rate for DAI. When DAI is being oversold on the market, it means there is a large dependency on DAI in its protocol, as arbitrage bots are rapidly buying up cheap DAI from liquidity pools and coming to Maker to redeem it for DAI at the $1 pegs price. By increasing interest rates, sellers of DAI are incentivized to stop selling and instead park their DAI in its lending platforms to earn the high interest. This stops DAI being oversold in liquidity pools, whilst also increasing the amount that is able to be redeemed. So we've now gone through what the integration is and why it exists. But what does it mean for pDAI? We went through how Maker can deposit DAI into lending platforms and earn aDAI and cDAI. As it holds these derivatives of DAI, it's also able to redeem the derivatives for the underlying DAI that backs them. So this integration allows for the movement of DAI and its derivatives directly between platforms, in either direction. Maker has a claim over DAI in Aave and Compound. Aave has a claim over DAI in Maker. And so too does Compound. So, back to our situation over on PulseChain. Whilst Maker did have its emergency shutdown module triggered, this integration remains. The ability to move pDAI and its derivatives between these platforms still exists. Aave and Compound still have claims over DAI held within Maker. When the ESM was triggered in Maker, it wrote off its debt of pDAI owed to Aave and Compound. That's not what would happen in a normal shutdown. What should have happened is Maker's vaults become frozen, system accounting stops, and then redemption processes should have kicked in to begin making each protocol whole again. Maker should have began repaying its lending platforms the pDAI it owed. But it didn't. What does this mean? The DAI within Maker that's been built up in its bad debt, or woe, is effectively stranded. But its lending platforms have a claim on that pDAI. pAave and pCompound governance can decide they want that pDAI they're owed. What would happen if they were to do this? We'll go through using Compound as the example. But first, remember, Maker has a lot of debt in the form of pDAI built up within its system, known internally as woe. Compound has cDAI reserves, which, when the direct integration is in full swing, represents the pDAI that was minted by Maker and then deposited into Compound lending pools in exchange for the cDAI. So what happens if cDAI reserves are larger than woe? It means the amount of pDAI held in Compound is greater than the amount of bad debt Maker created internally. It means that Maker versus Compound is in a position to become solvent. By that I mean Compound has enough assets to cover Maker's liabilities, or in other words, its debt. Let me put it plainly. Compound wants the pDAI it's owned to help back its derivative, cDAI. And with the amount of cDAI in Compound being greater than the pDAI held within Maker, through this direct integration, it has a right to what it's owed. Should Compound's governance decide to call on that debt, they would release the pDAI from Maker and begin receiving backing for its cDAI. This would begin to give cDAI some value. It can then be routed through to increase the price of pDAI, which in turn increases the value of cDAI's backing collateral and increases its value. And we have this flywheel of price appreciation. But if the goal is to peg pDAI, the pioneers can't simply just sell cDAI on the market to buy pDAI. Why is that? Because that would put more pDAI back on the market. Why? Because it would put pDAI into the hands of arbitrage bots who would be buying up cDAI in liquidity pools and redeeming it for pDAI in the Compound protocol. So, how would the pioneers be able to get pDAI to its $1 price target? There are a few steps here. cDAI itself is accepted collateral within the Compound protocol. First, they deposit cDAI and mint cETH. Why cETH? You may already know that wrap Pulse is one-to-one convertible with pWeth. But it turns out cETH is also convertible one-to-one with pWeth. Once they have their cETH, they can convert into pWeth for free, and then into wrap Pulse. It's wrap Pulse they'll use to buy up pDAI. Wrap Pulse is heavy with liquidity. pDAI is light, making it easy to lift. And remember, the effect is to lift the price of pDAI, and therefore cDAI, which enables them to mint more cETH and repeat the cycle. So there isn't just one, but two flywheels in action here. Self-reinforcing cycles that bring pDAI to its $1 price target. Now, at this point you might be thinking, should I buy some cDAI? The reality is we don't know what price it will go to. It's currently being infinitely minted whenever anyone buys it. You're essentially buying a share of that pool of cDAI. This stuff's complicated enough. You know where pDAI is going. So the pioneers are going to double flywheel pump pDAI to $1. How does it keep its peg once it's there? Does it need Maker? Well, what are the ingredients needed to maintain a peg token? You need a protocol, collateral that justifies the pegged asset's price, and arbitrage bots participating in those liquidity pools. We've got all those things. If pDAI trades below $1 in a liquidity pool, our bots will buy it, lifting its price locally in that pool. They can then redeem that $1 worth of cDAI within Compound. They could choose to stop there. They've already made a profit whilst sat in cDAI. Or they could choose to end up being back in pDAI. Either way, they restore the peg locally in liquidity pools and make a profit doing so. If pDAI trades above $1 in a liquidity pool, they do the reverse, getting pDAI at the correct price within Compound and redeeming it for cDAI or cETH, and selling pDAI into the liquidity pools to bring pDAI back down to its peg locally in those liquidity pools. So you see, Maker might be closed, but the path to peg is very much open. But what about our Hyperloop? Here's what I think we can expect to see next. There is an operational version of Maker that exists on PulseChain, currently called PyMaker. This fork of Maker appeared at the exact moment Maker was shut down, and it has all the upgrades Maker released in its code since PulseChain launched. Someone's gone through a lot of effort developing this, then coincidentally launches it right when Maker is ESM'd, and then silence. Why spend all that time and energy creating an upgraded Maker on PulseChain, only to then not advertise it? We've had nothing. Apart from a few hours where, on the front-end code, Pi was changed to pDAI, and then back again. I don't believe this is how things remain. I think this will emerge as the new maker. A vault-pegged stablecoin within its own protocol is the most effective at managing a peg. And it gives us all what we've come to love and understand, our Hyperloop. pDAI pegs, resulting in an enormous injection of buying power. The Hyperloop kicks off. All of PulseChain skyrockets. The peg sends shockwaves throughout all of crypto, media coverage, exchange listings, fresh capital. Then the forgotten farms make a reappearance, increasing liquidity whilst driving parity. And it's at this point we're reminded of PulseChain's true purpose: mass migration. The path to peg is open. pDAI's place in the market has been secured. The slingshot has been loaded. Now all that's left is to pull the trigger.
Somebody says that they're building a MakerDAO replacement so that we have like DAI on PulseChain.
You could get a God candle at any moment.